morning. How's everybody doing? Good to see y'all. It sounded good in worship this morning. Can we just thank our team up here for bringing the worship to us every week? Isn't it incredible? It's a lot of work that they put in and a lot of commitments to that. So as you saw today is Sabbath and contentment. But before we jump into that, I just want to say one more thing about our discipleship pathways that we're introducing to you guys. So the Discovery Bible Study, it's going to be broken up into 3 5-week tracks, okay? And so if you hear 15 weeks, some people are like, 15 weeks? Oh my gosh, I can't do that. But 3 5-week tracks, it kind of gives you some on-ramps and off-ramps. And so if you jump in and you're like, all right, we're going to start in Genesis, and it's an overarching study of the whole entire Bible so you can see how it fits together in its entirety, but also you're going to actually learn how to study for yourself and apply Scripture for yourself, okay? Now, I think a lot of the assumption in churches is everybody knows how to do that, but quite honestly, hardly anyone knows how to do that, all right? And so the Bible teachers who are going to do this are Dave and Terry Buckaloo. They were missionaries in Brazil for years. They are both prolific teachers of the Bible, and so Dave is going to be leading that. Terry is supporting him. It's going to be an incredible opportunity, and so we want you guys to sign up for that if you're like, hey, I do just want to get to know my Bible better, okay? It's going to pay dividends for you for the rest of your life to know how to study your own Bible, all right? Then you can check me and see if I'm teaching the right thing. You should do that anyways, by the way. Okay, so second, the one that I'm teaching is called Reproducing Disciples Catalyst, and what that's going to do is it's going to teach you, number one, what a true disciple is, but also how to be a disciple maker. This is the baseline of everything Jesus told us to do. So nothing else outside of that matters in your Christian walk if you don't have that down, okay? And so we want to teach you how to do this. First question is, what is a disciple to you? Okay, then we give you a biblical definition of that, and then you start to build your life out, and you walk in response to that based on that definition alone. Now, most people's idea of a disciple today is fill your head with more knowledge. That is not ever what Jesus said. So this is going to teach you and train you, but it's also going to teach you how to reproduce that, okay? So there is knowledge, but there's action with it, so you can actually become a disciple maker. So this is why we want you to sign up for these. We're going to offer these year-round, but don't wait. Mine is already really full. Theirs is already close to full, so we're keeping them small for a reason. So just sign up if you haven't, but let's jump in, okay? Today, Sabbath and contentment. When you hear the word contentment, I just want you to kind of roll around in your mind your own definition of what that means to you, okay? So there's contentment and there's discontentment. So for you, what does contentment mean? What does it mean for you to actually be content? I want to start out with Matthew 11. This is going to set the stage for all the talks that we have about Sabbath, because this is Jesus and what he is inviting us into. So I want to start here in Matthew chapter 11, starting in verse 28. Let's read it together, okay? He says, "Come to me, all of you who are weary and burdened." My guess is that fits all of you in this room. So he's giving all of you an invitation. "And I will give you rest." Not the things you're pursuing, not the things that you're trying to get rest from, but I will give you rest. "Take up my yoke and learn from me, because I am lowly and humble in heart." That's his posture. That is our posture if we're going to go and receive this rest from him. He says, "And you will find rest for your souls." That's the second time we hear this in 2 verses. "For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." Now I want you to think about body tired and then soul tired. Those are 2 different things. There's body tired and soul tired, okay? So when he is inviting us in, he's like, I'll give you rest. Okay, that's our body, it's our flesh. But then it goes to one step further, and he's like, I will actually give you rest for your weary soul. Now, I don't know that anyone probably ever would have admitted that they had a weary soul prior to lockdown in March of 2020. I think we all know what that means now. Because what has happened since then is I think we are so much more aware of the weariness that we live in, physically fatigued, but then that takes such a toll on our soul. Especially when we look around the world and we go, what is happening? I don't know how to make sense of this world. I don't know what to do anymore. I thought I had a handle on my life. I thought I had a handle on where the world was going. I have no idea, and neither does anyone else. What do we do? And that just creates this unrest in your soul. And Jesus is like, hey, you can pursue all the things that you want, but if you want rest for your weary soul, I am the one who can give you that. Now, what I want you to realize is this is not a commandment and it's not a mandate. It's an invitation. Big, big difference. If we were to be forced to rest, how many of you would take that seriously? I'm going to make you rest. Lay down. Anytime my mom ever tried to make me go to bed early, I proved her wrong by staying up all night. I'll show you. And then I paid for it the next day. But anyways, that's how we work, right? And so Jesus is giving us an invitation. What I want you to hear from that is an invitation is a really big deal. Like, do you ever remember like when you were in middle school and you saw, back when I was in middle school, you handed paper things out, and then the girl or the guy was walking around the school handing invitations out, and they were nearing you, and you were like, don't look, don't make eye contact, because if they come by you, then that means you're cool. If they walk by, you didn't see him, so you really don't know. Don't look. And then the invitation comes, and you're like, hey, I'm cool, I knew it. Like an invitation's a big deal, right? Now, there's been invitations I've received that I pretended I didn't receive, but for the most part, invitations are a really big deal. Jesus is inviting us into this rest. So Jesus is giving you an invitation to learn from him and enjoy his rest. This goes against every way we are conditioned to live in the pursuit of getting everything we want personally for our lives. This is why this sounds so weird to us. Because from the time you can remember what a pursuit of something was, this is anti that. Now, is it wrong to pursue things? Not at all. As long as they're in their proper balance and things are in their proper order. But we're not taught proper order. We're not taught proper balance typically. We're taught pursue and get what you want. That is the way we do things. There's a combination of words that make up the understanding of the Sabbath. If you remember what they were, it's Shabbat and Nuach. Shabbat means to literally stop working, okay? It means I work in cubicle world, and at 5 p.m. I'm watching the clock, boom, shut my computer, I leave, work's over with, it's done. I do not think about that again until I walk back into my cubicle, and I open my computer back up, and I start working again. That's the idea of work, whatever it is that your job is. It's stopping work. That's not enough, though, for the Sabbath that Jesus is inviting us to. He says, now take it one step further, and I want you to nuwak. I want you to sit in the presence of who I am, but also enjoy the presence of the people around you. So a lot of us can justify saying we have a Sabbath by saying, well, I stopped working, but I did 1,000 other things that weren't related to my paying job. Right? Jesus is like, I mean, good that you took a day off. It's not what I mean by Sabbath, okay? A day off gives you some rest. A Sabbath gives you restoration. Big difference. So a day off will give you rest, fine, you need one, but a Sabbath actually gives you restoration if you truly will dive into what it is. And so you need to stop working, but then you need to be fully present with Jesus and the people around you. That is going to complete a biblical Sabbath. Now, I think there's underlying reasons why we don't want to take a Sabbath, and it all lies with our contentment. I'm going to ask you a few diagnostic questions about your own life. We're all pursuing something in our lives. My question to you is, what is driving your pursuits? Now, this works for both sides of things. Those of you that are overachievers, well, three sides. Those of you that are middle achievers, and those of you that are underachievers. This crosses all three barriers. I'm a high pursuit person. I never have an off button until I'm forced to have an off button. And that's how I work. I'm around people that have a middle ground button, and it's great. They have a constant, steady, average pursuit of things. And then I'm around people, not for very long, but around people that have no drive whatsoever. And they don't really honestly pursue anything. Wherever you are on that spectrum, this is going to apply to all of us. What is the reason you pursue the way that you do? I mean, have you ever even asked yourself that question? Why am I doing what I'm doing? Let me ask you a few. Why am I living the life I'm living? Like when you're a little kid and somebody asks you what you want to do, are you doing it? I mean, chances are no, because here's what we do in our grown-up brains. Well, I wanted to be a race car driver, but that's just stupid. Well, there's obviously a race car driver, so it's not that stupid. Well, I wanted to be this, and I mean, but that's crazy, though. I wanted to do this. Yeah, but that just doesn't make sense. And what happens is in our little kid mind that doesn't know anything about the world, we dream big, we think about things, and we go, that's what I want to do with the rest of my life. Now, I'm not saying that's what we all need to do, but my point is, what happens is when we start to understand the pursuit of things, we start to go, oh, wait, this is going to make me way more money than that because I'll probably never make that, and blah, 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 blah. My question to you is, why are you living the life you're living right now? Or are you just living it? Second question, why do I work where I do? Isn't it funny how you just kind of fall into a job you never intended to have or stay at, and you just stay there? Or you keep jumping from job to job, hoping it'll be the one, and it never is? Why do you work where you do? Here's a really, really hard question. What makes me happy? Like, what makes me happy? I was being coached by a guy several years back for leadership and development, and he asked me, what fills your bucket? We did an exercise, what fills my bucket, what drains my bucket. I had a really, really hard time answering what filled my bucket. Because although I do things that are fun, I do things that are enjoyable, I don't know that they necessarily fill me up. I can tell you exactly what drains me. That's easy. You guys all probably know that about yourselves, right? But what actually makes you happy? What brings you happiness? Last one. Are you satisfied with your life the way it is? If you had to do what you're doing right now for the rest of your life until Jesus came back, are you satisfied with it? Does something need to change? Do you work too much? Do you not work enough? Do you have an average mentality on life? Like, I don't know what it is for you, but I want you to take these questions seriously because they're a diagnostic system that we can run on our life. And I think what we do is we settle in a groove in these two bottom tiers, the middle or the low pursuits, and we just kind of live and exist. Out here, we're never really satisfied with anything, so we'll just drive and drive and drive and drive and go and go and go and go. And we feel productive. We feel like we're doing a lot of stuff, but we may or may not be. But we're always busy, so it seems like we are, right? And so what I want you to understand is like we're working around this question of contentment. And so the question after you answer those is, am I content? Am I content? Because this is the baseline of everything we're talking about today. If you are not content, you cannot truly and properly Sabbath. Now, here's the basic definition of contentment. It is a state of happiness and satisfaction. It is a state of happiness and satisfaction. I just want you to see, if I were to go, give me 2 words that describe your life, would those 2 be the words? If they're not, what words would you write there? Because I think for a lot of us, we just accept a lot of things in our life that we really honestly shouldn't. We do a lot of things just because we've always done them. We don't make changes because we're afraid of the unknown. We don't. And if I were to say, write down 2 words that describe your life, would they be happiness and satisfaction? See, there seems to be extremes on this issue of pursuits, but there is a middle majority of the country that's just kind of like floating around through life, I think. And I like to refer things back to sitcoms and movies because they're the best tell of our day. Anybody watch Parks and Rec? Yeah, okay, good. So the made-up town of Pawnee, Indiana, it all surrounds this government center, and you have 2 opposing viewpoints. You have Ron Swanson, who hates everything about the government, right? And his whole motto is, I will work hard at work to get nothing done at work. And then you have Leslie Knope on the other side, who works 23 hours a day and still feels like she needs to work more to get more accomplished. And it seems like we have these extremes, but then the majority of everybody else is kind of in the middle somewhere here. But if you find yourself out here, really honestly pursuing nothing, just kind of like doing whatever you want to do, but you're not necessarily accomplishing anything really, or you're over here and man, you are achieving and trying to achieve all of these things in perfection and you're never satisfied, and like, I just want you to see where you might land, or maybe you are in the middle somewhere. So where did the switch happen to pursue something we don't have and make it our life goal to get it? We can actually answer that question. Think about this. Have you ever thought about pre-World War II, how differently our lives were? Probably not, because we're all young in here, right? Youngish. But pre-World War II, life was completely different. Post-World War II, when all of the manufacturers in America started to look around and go, uh-oh, we're going to have hundreds of thousands of men and thousands of women coming back to the country who will be unemployed now. And what we have been manufacturing for the last 5 years is now obsolete because we're going to win the war. And as people started to come back, these manufacturers go, oh shoot, we're going to be obsolete as a steel and a brass and an electric company because no one needs what we have anymore. Here's what happens. There's a famous quote by the Philip Morris Agency back then at the end of World War II that said, we need to move our country to a wants-based society, W-A-N-T, away from a needs-based society. Pre-World War II, we lived in need. Post-World War II, you can watch this happen, and to me it's the most brilliant marketing campaign that's ever existed because we still live here. We do not live in a needs-based anything right now. We live fully in a want-based economy, don't we? Let me show you some of their early advertisements, okay? This is a rendition of what Times Square, what they're trying to get you to see. Some of these pictures may be hard for you to see because they're really old, but this was in 1945 by the Douglas Lee advertising agency, and it says, glorify your product in a monument of light. This is the advertisement for Times Square. If only it looked that cool. Look at the next one. Here's the caption. Why watch baseball from your living room when you can watch it from your pool? Do you see the kid outside? This is in 1961. An underground sunken living room where a pool surrounds your home. Pretty sweet. But I want you to pay attention to something very close. What is in the center of this room that everybody's positioned towards? The TV. This was the introduction of making the TV the focal point of your living room. With that being said, here's slide 3. This is going to be probably hard for you to see, but this is hilarious. The advertisement in 1958 is, now that you have a TV, we want you to have all the time to watch it, so why do your chores when you can have a robot do them? That is a robot hedge trimmer. Do you see that? Pretty dope if you ask me, but obviously it never really took off. 1958, okay? Look at the next one. This one obviously happened. Would have been awesome. But here's what it says, more power to you. You want to know the underneath caption says, take off and land anywhere you want and plug it into any electrical outlet and it will recharge it. They're working on it, was the subcaption. 1959, this advertisement came out. Here's the last one. 1970. So you can see all those yellow walls, that all entertainment will be holographic and wall-size 3D. 1970, that's what they wanted your house to look like. Would be pretty cool, but if you have overstimulation issues, you would die in your own home. Okay? But what's funny is, like, we think about the things that we have today in the technology. Technology way outpaced us back then. There are a million of these advertisements you can go and look at. I just pulled a handful of them out. I mean, technology and us trying to get things we honestly don't need. Who needs an underground living room with a pool around it? I mean, I do, but who else needs one? It would be pretty amazing. But if we were to pursue all of these advertisements, and there is so much more now, I could never take a Sabbath because I couldn't rest. I would always have to pursue more. Now, here's what you might be sitting here saying, okay? But what if we make good excuses? What if we make good excuses? Well, it's for my kids. I want to leave them something, okay? Well, I mean, that's noble. I have kids. I want to leave them something as well. But let's refer back to Jesus. I want you to recall when Jesus was approached by people at the height of his popularity. The height of his popularity, Jesus would walk into a town and 5,000 people would walk out to meet him. They only counted men back then because of that society. That's 5,000 men, not including women and children. So upwards of 15,000 people would walk out to see Jesus. And they would go, Jesus, we want to follow you. We want to be part of the cool crowd. We want to be in. What do we do? And Jesus said things like, well, I don't have a house and I don't have any food really, but if you want to follow me, let's go. No. Jesus, I'm the guy you've been looking for. I have actually kept all of the commandments since my childhood. You'll probably move me right up to your assistant. When do we start? Jesus is like, man, amazing. Good job. Now go sell all your stuff, give it to the poor, and then come follow me. Nope. See, Jesus. On and on and on and on and on. This happens throughout Jesus' life on earth. And so we can make really good excuses for things that they're not even bad. But if I have to tailor my lifestyle to do something that walks outside of Scripture, it's still bad, even if it seems good. Next one. I have to save and pay for my kids' college. I must have missed that memo somewhere because no one paid for my college. And I didn't pay for my kids' college either, by the way. That makes me a terrible parent. Don't judge me, and don't send me an email or a book that talks about paying for your kids' college. The next one. I didn't have anything growing up. I want my kids and my grandkids to have a lot. It's noble. Not biblical. It's noble. It's not biblical. There's fine, sure, things about leaving legacy and so on and so on, but they're talking more about a spiritual legacy than anything else. Money runs out, stock markets change, everything crashes. We put hope and we put things in those things, we will be let down all of the time. Now, if you're saving for college and if you're saving for retirement, which I have one of those coming up for you, like those things aren't bad, but do they get in the way of what Jesus told you to do? If they don't, keep doing them. I want to make sure I'm comfortable in my retirement. Do you know that that's a Western culture thing? That in most cultures, that's not even a thing or a word? See, here's how it happens in most other cultures. There's multi-level buildings that you live in. And so let's say that my two sons have recently gotten married. So let's say that my mom and dad, they, because of their age, lived on the third floor, okay? Man and I lived on the second floor with our kids, and, the bottom floor was ready for whoever got married. Well, Dylan gets married first, and so him and Kennedy then move into that bottom floor. It's their own place, but then we stay there. But then Elijah gets married, he comes in, Dylan moves up to the second, we move to the third, grandparents move to the fourth, and you took care of each other. You worked till you could. You had an income, and you had something that was based into the societal giving of that construct. But there was no big fat 401ks, and I'm drawing on this, I'm going to retire on the beach in Florida. Hey, if that's for you, good job, but that is not at all what God intended actually for our life to be. He actually said, hey, the rest of your life is to be lived telling the world about me. Go and tell them everything that's happened, because 50,000 people a day are going to die and slip into eternity that don't know Jesus. That's your job the rest of your life. Whatever that looks like, that's what it looks like. Now, if you want to do that on a retirement beach in Florida, go for it. But old people don't come to Jesus. No offense to anyone older than me. Statistically, 18 years old and under, 90% of people will come to follow Jesus. After that, it gets drastically lower. I don't want to worry about money. It's the last one, then I'll lay off. I don't want to worry about money. I don't either. I get it. But there's an element of worrying about money and then faith where we trust God for what his provision can give to us, or we will play God and make sure we don't worry about money. There's odd ironies in the way that we live our life. Because a lot of the things that we want, they're noble and they're good. There's literally nothing wrong with them. But when they make us step outside of the scriptural demands that Jesus gives us, they become wrong. And so as Jesus is pointing us to take a Sabbath, my guess is a lot of us, if we're stuck here, go, that sounds great, but I can't do that. I'll lose everything I have. Okay? What's a bigger conversation? The first question is, do you need all that you have? First. Second, We can help you work backwards out of that if you want to truly follow what Jesus has for your life. Now, let me make a disclaimer here. You could be the wealthiest person on earth and still radically follow Jesus and be well within the confines of what he tells you to do in Scripture. This isn't about the amount of money you have. This is all about what you're pursuing. Let me tell you how Paul addresses this to a young pastor named Timothy. Go to 1 Timothy chapter 6. 1 Timothy chapter 6, Paul is addressing this young pastor named Timothy. He started a church, he's building disciples, and he's living out, quite honestly, the Great Commission very well. And Paul is writing back instructions for him, okay? Here's what he says, starting in verse 6. We're kind of picking him up mid-thought, but here's what he says. We're going to read all the way through it, then we'll come back and talk about it. He says, but godliness with contentment is great gain. I want you to notice the pursuit of how this starts out. Godliness with contentment is great gain. So he's actually talking about the gain we just were talking about, all right? For we brought nothing into the world, and we can take nothing out. If we have food and clothing, we will be content with these. As you read that, you might be saying, we who? Not all of us we. But those who want to be rich fall into temptation, a trap, and many foolish, harmful desires, which plunge people into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. And by craving it, some have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. But you, O man of God, flee from these things and pursue righteousness, godliness, faith, love, endurance, and gentleness. Fight the good fight of faith. Now, the money verse there has gotten so misconstrued over the years. I've heard some of the craziest sermons I've ever heard around that are literally insane and should be pulled down off the internet. For the love of money, let's look at what it says again. The love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. Okay, money is not the root of all evil. Money is not evil. Okay, I've heard all of those things. Read it again. The love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. Okay, now I would argue it's probably the most consuming one because when you look at Jesus' public sermons on earth, he talks about money more than heaven and hell combined. Why? Because he knew it would be the biggest trap of our life. It's funny that when my wife and I first got married and we moved into our first apartment, we had a hand-me-down couch, a hand-me-down bed, and literally 3 things in our refrigerator. Now, the contentment with which we lived our life back then is very different from today because none of those are struggles anymore. This is what it's saying. There was a point where a pursuit of money became my number one pursuit. I want you to hear very carefully what this is actually saying. If you are wealthy beyond anything you could ever imagine, that is not wrong. The love of money is wrong. It changes your pursuits. If my life exists to get more and to get more and to get more, and you would probably never admit that, but your life is going to show everybody that's what this means, then he's talking to you. And he's talking to me if that's where my life goes. Because when Jesus says things like, hey, you need to be Sabbathing, you need to be stopping working and be present with me and with the people around you, and you're like, okay, Jesus. And we move back towards our pursuits. Like we probably even want this, but we can't because of the lifestyle that we've built. Now, go back to chapter 6 or verse 6. Let's see what this means in its context. But godliness with contentment is great gain. There's a ton packed in those few words. I'm going to work through them in their definitions, and then we'll put it together at the end, okay? It says, first off, godliness. This is a respect and a holiness. All right. This should give you a clue of what Jesus finds incredible for you to pursue. Did you catch it? It's holiness. I am to become more like Jesus. He is holy, and so I should be pursuing holiness. That should be the underlying baseline of everything in my life. The Great Commission is my command. My goal is to be more like Jesus every day. And so when he says godliness, I'm pursuing holiness. I, every single day, am trying to become more like you, Jesus. That will be a lifelong pursuit. It will never, ever be accomplished or finished because Jesus is the only one who could accomplish that. But my goal and your goal is to be like him more every single day. So godliness with contentment. Here's contentment. You ready? A perfect condition of life in which no aid or support is needed. Well, that changes things a bit, doesn't it? I'll be really honest with you guys right now. I don't feel like I'm ever really content with my life. Honestly, I don't really want more things. I really don't. I have enough things. I don't even have that much stuff. But a perfect condition of life in which no aid or support is needed, that's very, very different. See, this is that whole question of, do you love your life? Why are you pursuing? This is why we built those questions out in the beginning. It actually means a sufficiency of the necessities of life. Remember, Timothy's like, if we have food and clothing, we'll be content. Those are sufficient needs of the basic necessities of life. So godliness is this pursuit of holiness. Contentment is a perfect condition of life in which no aid or support is needed. The root word of that is actually independent of external circumstances. I am independent of external circumstances. This means I am completely satisfied with what God is giving me, and I don't need anything that the world is offering me. If I get it, great, but I don't need it. The next word is this idea of great and gain. Here's what the word great means. It's God's preeminent blessings, which I don't know about you, but I would choose that over anything I can accomplish in my life any day of the week. And then the gain is actually my source of gain, all right? So you're going to have a source of gain in your life, which is you, or it's going to be God. It's real simple. This is not complicated, okay? Put all these things together. Godliness is a pursuit of holiness by me. That is building contentment in my life, which means it's a perfect condition of life in which no aid or support is needed, independent of my external circumstances, with God's preeminent blessings on my life as my source of gain. And so, if you're a follower of Jesus, would you rather have the blessings of God on your life, or would you rather have whatever you can accomplish with your own life? And I know the answer to that question. It's a bit rhetorical, and you don't need to answer me. We all want to be right here. But what has happened is we've built these pursuits in our life that keep us struggling from here to here. And so we just kind of waffle around back and forth, and James calls this being tossed to and fro like we're on a boat out in the sea. And Jesus is like, hey, listen, remember, this is an invitation. I'm inviting you into this rest. Over here, if you don't have a side hustle, you're never going to make it. So we freak out and we stress out about needing a side hustle. And then we get one, and that's not enough. We need 2 or 3 or 4. And so we work and we make money and we do these things, but we're not satisfied because this won't bring satisfaction. And Jesus is like, I'm going to give it to you as long as your pursuit is of me. Now, I know that this is going to be hard for all of us to rein in, so I'm going to give you a practical story as we end. 2 things. 1, if you've ever seen the movie Lone Survivor, there's a line in that movie that wrecked me. True story about a Navy SEAL team that went in to kill a bad guy. There's 4 of them. They get caught, they get trapped, and they get surrounded by the enemy army. And one of the guys tells the main guy, Marcus Luttrell, he says, you tell my wife that I died fighting with my brothers and with a full heart. And he was literally about to die. That line wrecked me. Because if I was like on my deathbed Right then and there, not later on in life, right now, could I say that? I am dying with a full heart. I can't. I couldn't say that. I don't even know what that means for me. I don't even know what that means to have a full heart, to really, honestly, truly pursue everything God has for me. And when I heard that, I was like, oh my gosh, I could not say that right now. But I think there's a reason why. My family and I, we were at Cracker Barrel when Tyler was about 4 or 5 years old, and what we would always do is we'd go in, we would walk around the store, we would see all the stuff, we'd go in, we'd eat at our table, we'd come back out and look around the store. That's what you do with kids when you don't buy, you let them look twice and hopefully they forget about stuff. Doesn't work. But we go in and we're walking around and there's a little toy section here, and Amanda and I had kind of walked over and we were looking at some shirts, and we turn around and we don't see Tyler. And all of you parents, you know what I just went through, right? And I like look around, I knock an old lady over on accident, and I knock a clothes rack over, not really, but, and we don't find him anywhere. And the panic that has set in, I'm running into the bathroom, I ran back into the restaurant, we are all over the store, and I just happened to run outside to see, by some chance, if he's out there. And as I walk out the door, I see my son sitting there weeping. And he's terrified. It's dark. There's nobody around that he knows. And he looks up at me, and the look on his face of relief, of like, I'm safe again. I had the same response to him. It did something to me that day. 2 things I would say. 1, your Father right now, if you're a follower of Jesus, is pursuing you that frantically to live this life. The reason why when we don't see Jesus like that, is because we don't understand our Father. Tyler didn't know me enough. He did not understand me enough to know I would never leave him in a million years. And as he ran out and he sat on that bench and he just hoped some kind of safety was coming for him, it's because he didn't know his Father well enough. He didn't know the depths I would go to protect him. The ways I would run and do anything to keep him safe. And if you are sitting here going, I want that life, but there's no way, it's because you don't know your Father. What he wants for you, how he wants you to run to him, you would know that there is no reason for you to be ashamed or afraid to go, I've blown it. He says, I know, but come here. This is why I love the story of the prodigal son. The prodigal son went to his dad and said, I want my inheritance now. That is you literally walking to your father and saying, I wish you were dead. Because you didn't get the inheritance until after they died. His dad said, okay, I'll give it to you. He goes out and he literally squanders it on drugs and prostitutes, crazy party living. Then he's broke. And he says, well, the only thing I know is to go back home. On the way home, he's having this conversation with himself. Okay, I'll go back. I'll explain my situation. Dad, let me work as one of your servants. I'll literally eat. Whatever you throw out to the pigs, I'll literally eat that. And so if we were in a dark room and there was some light back there and one of my kids walked through that door, I would know exactly who they were by their body language. I don't need to hear their voice. I don't need to see them. I know my sons. And when this dad was standing in front of his house and he saw a long way off his son coming, there he is. It says he ran and he embraced him and he loved him. And his son was like, Dad, I'm sorry. And he's like, hey, bring the robe. Dad, just let me be one of your servants. Bring the ring. This is my son. Just let me be a servant, Dad. Hey, get the fattened calf. We're going to celebrate. My son is home. Let me just eat what the pigs eat. Come home, son. I love you. If you don't think that's the response you will get from God right now, it's because you don't know your Father. He's inviting you to come rest. That invitation is with open arms. I know what you've done. I know what you're doing. I love you. You're my son. You're my daughter. Just come on. I don't want you to leave here today not knowing your Father, not knowing the rest He wants to give you. And as a dad who has felt in the depths of his soul the loss, what I thought was the loss of my son, some of you have actually experienced that, and I cannot even imagine. I can tell you that if you're lost right now away from God, He feels the same way. He wants nothing more than for you to run to Him. He will run to you. He wants to give you rest, church. But you have to know who He is first. I'm going to ask you to close your eyes as the band comes up. And I think the reason why I get emotional for this is because for so many years of my life, I thought God was mad at me. I thought there was no way He could forgive the things that I did. And quite honestly, I didn't even care if He did, to be honest. Because I just felt like He was, some of the things that had happened in my life, I felt like He was mean. I felt like He didn't care about me. I felt like, why would I tell you these things? You don't even care anyways. And there was a moment when I actually handled grace in my hands for the first time. And I remember how overwhelmed I was knowing that God wanted to forgive me of my sin. Not only forgive me, but like wipe all of that clean. Give me a brand new, fresh start to my life. When I actually handled that in my hands for myself, something changed in me that day. For one, I experienced true salvation in my life. I surrendered my life to Jesus right then. Truly. But second, I don't ever view God that way anymore, ever. I mean, I may feel like I'm ashamed or embarrassed sometimes, but that doesn't last long because I remember who He is. See, my son Tyler knows me well enough now that he knows in a million years I would never leave him. If he couldn't find me, he would wait because he knows I would never leave him. Obviously, my other boys know that too. But there comes a point when you know your Father so well and you're pursuing Him, that when you mess up, you know, no, He's not mad at me. It's my dad. I know Him. He'll forgive me. It's not like we make light of our sin, but we know that as we confess it to Him, He's already forgiven us. And church, I want you to experience that kind of joy and freedom in your life. So if right now, your pursuit of your life and the things that you can get from it have won, they don't have to anymore. Start by confessing it back to Him. Jesus, my pursuit has not been of you. It's been of other things. I'm going to ask that you would please forgive me. Now here's two promises. One, He already knows that. And two, He said, yes, I'll already forgive you. It's the beauty and the amazing thing about grace. But then here's where you have to decide something. You can ask for forgiveness and He will forgive you. And then you can just stay in that trajectory and you can keep running that cycle and that play a lot. Or you can go, all right, enough is enough. I want the life that Jesus intended me to have. I want to accept this invitation to find rest and to follow and practice the ways of Jesus. Now, for some of you, that means coming to salvation today. For some of you, that means for the first time, Jesus, I'm going to surrender my life to you and follow you. And here in a minute, we're going to have people stationed in the back ready to pray with you in front of that coffee bar. If that's you, go back there and say, hey, I'm ready to follow Jesus. What do I do? Or maybe you're going to come back there and you're going to go, okay, I think this is what I want, but I have some questions. Can we talk? Yes. But then for those of you that are followers of Jesus in here, this is the decision moment for you. Because repentance is walking away from the life you've built to pursue the one Jesus wants for you. Forgiveness is already done. You now have to decide if you're ready to repent and walk away. I pray that you do. I promise you there's no better life you can have here. Jesus says, we're about to sing, as we're about to worship through song. I pray for the hearts of the people here today that they would know you, Father. There was such a long period of time where I didn't know you. Man, what a miserable life I was living. But if we can get a few of those pictures in our head right now and know that you, Jesus, are, if we could just see your face right now, you'd be like, come on, please run. I'm here. God the Father is ready. I pray that we would run into your arms right now, confessing but walking away and repenting. And Father, I pray that we'd be able to start a whole new life today. We love you in Jesus' name. Amen. If you need prayer, meet us in the back. Go ahead and stand.